Hey Andy, how are you?
Good, David. How are you?
I'm good, thanks. I guess you can hear me okay.
I can. How about you?
Oh, I can hear you great.
Awesome.
Awesome. Look at
Pleasure
that.
to meet you.
Pleasure to meet you as well. And again, thank you for your time today. I really appreciate you coming on. I mean, it's not live, obviously. I pre-record, but my audience is going to love you once we get down to the nitty gritty and we hear all the good stuff.
Sweet.
What's really cool actually is when Dennis first sent me the initial email about your project, what was going on. I couldn't help but feel an instant connection. I mean, not obviously not the same path, but myself being in advertising for 20 years, online advertising, and then I moved into mindfulness, and now I'm moving into using my YouTube channel to bring very rare recordings that people may not have heard and creating an online community and whatnot. So I mean, again, not the same path, but definitely a side swipe of it of sorts. And when Dennis first sent it, I just couldn't believe the initial synergy I felt right away from reading everything that he sent along. So this is awesome.
Thank you. Yeah. I mean, it's obviously something we all love so much, and it's really easy to do things that we love. So, yeah, it's been kind of a natural progression, I think, for me, going from the part of your life when you need a job to pay the bills, and then you kind of start to figure out, okay, what do I really love? And hopefully you get to do some more of that. And then you maybe even are lucky enough to get to focus more of your time on something you really, really, really love, like the Grateful Dead, which is where I'm at now.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that's my sentiment too. I mean, I started off by doing the Sunday show, Jerry Church, as a sort of one-off. I decided to click a button in YouTube that said premiere, and a live chat opened up, and I sat there and people showed up and week after week, and it just kind of grew. And I then extended that to a different kind of passion about giving back and doing all those different things. And it's amazing. And, having said that, you kind of mentioned it a little bit. I would love to hear the initial history of Andy Logan. Like I know your first show was April 3rd, '88. I mean, obviously we'll get to the foundation
Yep.
and the wonderful things you're doing. Obviously Easter Sunday back in Hartford. Can you speak a little bit about, your early days, sort of what got you there? Where were you when you at the Grateful Dead, that first show, and what that experience was like for yourself?
Absolutely. Yeah.
If you recall,
So,
if you recall.
oh yeah, I do, because it was kind of a roundabout way as far as shows go, which in a good way had me pretty well versed on the Grateful Dead when I saw my first show. So I was already on the bus, so to speak. And I knew what I was seeing, and I could appreciate it and all that. Not the way I wish it had played out, but because I started getting into the Grateful Dead in boarding school. I went to Westminster School in Simsbury, Connecticut, and listening to bootlegs. Had a friend there who was really, really into the Dead and had already started seeing shows, I think since '83 in his case. And so he was turning me on to bootlegs and the albums and the official, Book of the Deadheads and all those kinds of things. And, I was totally blown away right away by all of it. Actually am one of the people that I dug the albums too. I like the bootlegs, of course,
Yeah.
but I thought the albums were cool. I never really understood when people would be like, oh, the albums are trash or whatever it was. Like Terrapin and the the whole symphony. I mean, I love that. I thought it was awesome. So anyway, he was going to Buffalo '86,
Mhm.
and they were like, "Oh, we'll get some tickets, and you can come." And I had a roommate who was going to be my roommate the next year, lived up near there, so I was all set to do that. And then sadly, my mom probably played it smartly in a way, like didn't say no to me, And then until right before I was gonna try to find a bus ticket and get there, she was like, "No, you're too young. You're not doing that." So unfortunately, and I was of course furious. And now when I see those incredible videos they have of 7486, it just drives me crazy that I wasn't there. And then anyway, so I was too young for that, she said. And I did end up seeing the Kinks as my first concert with a friend in Hartford. And I can't remember if that was that following December or whenever that was, but around that time. And then I went to Worcester '87 to have it be my first show because that was not too far from Westminster. And sadly, because of boarding school, we got there late. And so the people that had tickets were able to get in. And the group of us that didn't, we tried, but it was like too many people. It's a very small venue. So anyway, we ended up going to the mall that was next door, and they did have some speakers and stuff playing, but I don't count that as my first show. We did take
For sure
we
not.
did take we took acid, and there were Easter bunnies in there, and we had a great time. It was really fun. But yeah, that didn't count. But I would say that summer, so the summer of '87, I really was listening to a lot of bootlegs, getting really into it even more so, especially the Hartford '87 bootleg. That totally, from the show that was before Worcester, for whatever reason, that totally was in my Subaru, just kind of nonstop listening to
Yeah.
that one.
Yeah, always burning
And
away, for sure.
so I probably, if I had been better on the ball, could have maybe found my way to like MSG or something. Or the show I really wish I had seen was Providence '87.
Mm.
But I know some day students went to that, and that show had like a Fire in the Mountain and Devil with a Blue Dress and lots of fun stuff that they were doing. I wish I had seen that one. Anyway, alas, it was about 6 months later when I got to go to the Hartford show. It's a show that's famous for Jerry's voice being really raspy, and though for me, I was so excited. And actually, if you listen to the Cold Rain, it was really good. The energy was huge.
Song
As were
5%. Song 5%.
Right, yeah. So as you know, from the East, the audience just going crazy, every lyric, everything, and so that was super exciting. But Jerry did attempt a Black Peter and like punch the microphone away, in like disgust with his own voice. The good news was I got to go the following Saturday to Worcester, and his voice was much better. And that was probably my first really, I'd say good dead show, I guess, in some ways.
You got a warm up. You got a warm up show, essentially.
Exactly. The funny thing was, so we were in boarding school, and they let us go, which was amazing. They said you can have a pass, and we got, someone was allowed to drive us, and we came back. And I'll never forget, on the way up the steps to the dean's office, because we had to check in with the dean after getting back. And of course, we'd smoke some weed and stuff. And the school I was at is a one-chance school. So if they caught you smoking weed or drinking, you were out. So, we were good at, breath mints and, Visine and stuff. And so anyway, but on the way up those steps, everyone had a little brown bag of, you remember those box cereals and stuff? Like,
yeah, of course. Yeah, totally.
Fruit Loops and different things, and Smart Food and all that. So on the way up the stairs, everyone's munchie was kind of hidden, on the steps. And then we went in, and they asked us some questions. The only mistake I made was they said, did you see any drugs there at the show? And because I was in boarding school, my instinct was to say no. And of course I did, right?
Yeah.
Everybody did. So I was the only person to say no. Everyone else said yes. No, but I didn't get grilled or anything like that. I mean, they must have probably known that the odds were something might have gone down, but because we were all lucid and able to handle that they let let us go.
Yeah, they gave you the benefit of the doubt.
Exactly.
That's definitely quite the long, strange trip, as I was going to position it earlier. I mean, it's always interesting to hear how people get to the dead. And I mean, even so, I mean, in essence, you could probably say your mother, in some ways, by saying no, was responsible for the journey in some ways, because
that's a very good way of looking at it.
You know what I mean? Because she laid that road by saying no initially, that allowed you then to get to where you got. I mean, even that first show, even listening to it in the mall with the headphones or whatever, on the speakers, that was definitely an experience that kept that love and that passion and that yearning for that very first show. And then even though the very first show, as you mentioned, wasn't necessarily Jerry's best vocal. I mean, usually I always find when Jerry's vocals are shot, he plays better with the guitar.
Right.
And so sometimes you get that balance, and and again, the emotion of it not being the perfect show or the show the weeks before that you really wanted to be, I think also potentially led to that journey, and you getting here in that regard, and not saying no and being persistent, being resilient. I mean, we're going to speak about the 420 in a few minutes, obviously, and whatnot, but that to me is intriguing again to hear that different journey, especially because, I mean, I know you started playing guitar, what was it, in 2008? I think I recall.
Yep.
And the first guitar you bought was the Gibson SG, which again is the live dead guitar. So again, I mean, what was it like to acquire that? Obviously, I mean, it was a little bit down your journey. And I guess the follow-up question to that kind of thing is, you know, when you first bought, I mean, that being one of the very first, you know, Jerry guitars you bought, and, you know, being a part of, you know, where you are today, and obviously we're going to talk about the Grateful Foundation, the Grateful Guitar Foundation in a minute. Was this something that, you know, was that idea, did that kind of come then at that time? I mean, I know the story also about Tribute, Saturn, we'll get to that in a few minutes also, but I'm curious right now to hear a little bit about Gibson SG and what that experience was like. Did you get to play it? Like, did you play it when you first got it? And how did it make you feel, kind of thing? Just, you know, that first experience with that at the moment.
Yeah, so I was when Jerry passed, so I tried to learn the guitar a couple times in college and stuff, and you know, it was too hard, quote unquote. It's boring. My hands hurt. My hands are too small. Blah blah blah. Excuse excuse. You know, I didn't fully grab it. Even though I'd always pick up guitars in people's rooms and noodle, you know, try to do something, and I could do like a wheel intro and a little do intro and you know a few little different things. But when Jerry passed, I was like, okay, I need to learn an instrument. This needs to happen. And because I'd had, you know, sort of struggled with guitar, I knew I could carry a beat. And I said, okay, I'll learn the drums. That's what I'll do. And so I went and took drum lessons and did that for, I don't know, probably 10 years or something like that. And you know, I can do, you know, rock beats and all that kind of stuff and had fun, but drums, you don't get the melody, right? So it's really only fun, not only, but it's, you know, more fun when you're doing it with buddies, right? And so though my wife also was inspired and she picked up the guitar.
Oh, cool.
So I was maybe living vicariously through her, but so her first guitar, you know, I wanted to buy her first guitar, and because I was, you know, am a deadhead or whatever, I got her a Takamine acoustic, just like Jerry's. So I actually started this in weird journey of buying Jerry guitars way back then in like, I guess that was probably like 95 or 96. And with that first Takamine, and then when she moved to electric, I got her also a Jerry style Sunburst Strat. So that was, you know, kind of falling in line with Jerry as the guide there for gear. And then so when I started playing, what happened was I read a book by Carol Dweck, and she's a Stanford researcher. And I became a psychotherapist after working in high tech in my first part of my career. So I was, you know, seeing books like this come across my desk. And so anyway, in her book, she talks about fixed mindsets and growth mindsets, and that we all have both in our mind, you know, about different things. And a lot of the buzzwords for those are phrases like it's too hard, it's boring, stuff like that. And so, you know, she challenged the reader to think about, when have you used those phrases, right? So it could be foreign language class or what have you, mathematics for me for sure, and then guitar. And so I always had wanted to play guitar, and I said, okay, this is it. You've got to, you know, I've got a fixed mindset about the guitar and my ability, and I need to have a growth mindset. And so my son was in kindergarten at the time. He's now 20. And I said, you know, I want to learn the guitar. He said, you know, okay, so do I. So I started taking lessons then with a teacher at his school, and it was all nursery rhymes. And she was not at all a deadhead and did not get that at all. And you know, in fairness to her, you know, not everyone is or whatever. So yeah. So anyway, I've obviously since moved on as far as her being a teacher. But in the beginning, yeah, she was helping me with like the Friend of the Devil and things like that. And I was playing like, you know, on the Takamine, and then as soon as I was able to play any chords at all, I was looking at Grateful Dead gear. So I put in an order for Thomas Lieber, who worked with Irwin, has a guitar called an American Beauty Classic. It's like looks like a black tiger essentially. So I ordered one of those. I put in an order with Matt Moriarty, who was making Wolf guitars at the time.
Yep.
And he's not doing that anymore, but he was a really good builder. And then yeah, I bought the SG, and you know, just it's such a badass looking guitar, and of course, Saint Stephen and all that, you know, early, you know, it's like 70 era Dead. And yeah, so that was sort of the beginning of it all. And then as I bought guitars from then on, it was always following in Jerry's footsteps as far as, gear that he would have liked or what have you. And then, of course, the natural extension of that was Bobby, and doing the same thing. And it's been really, really interesting going through the process of learning guitar, as well as, when you find an old modulus or whatever it is,
Mhm.
and then you order it, and then, whenever it comes, being really excited to see, like, what did they see in this, in
Yeah,
1980?
yeah, okay. Oh, oh, interesting.
Like,
Yeah, yeah.
why did Bobby want to do, um, this guitar, right? What was interesting to him? And I remember as soon as I picked up the first modulus, which is like a yeah, so early, doesn't have a serial number on it, but basically probably 83, I would guess, something like that.
Mhm.
Strat style body. And yeah, just moving like with chords just down the neck, like, you think of Watchtower, B minor, A, G or whatever, moving down the neck. Um, and you just see how quickly your hand moves down that carbon fiber neck. You're like, oh wow, that's fast. That feels really
Mm.
good. I can see why probably he was totally like, ooh, this is interesting. And so yeah, for all of the instruments, kind of getting a handle for the pros and the cons, of like, ooh, I like this chunky neck, but I kind of like the Strat, the twang that you get out of the Strat.
Mm.
And then you can see, like, as you go through, time, and sometime I hope you can come visit me and kind of go through that and just feel
Yeah,
like
yeah.
the hits and feel the guitars, because then you can kind of see where the custom side became an idea. Like, hey, what if we
Mm.
have, what if we've got a chunkier neck, like a Gibson style neck, maybe, with the Fender scale, and then you can see, where like Wolf comes in, and Tiger, and the evolution of them all.
Oh wow!
Um,
So like custom combos too, sometimes maybe trying to put things together and match it up to see. Oh wow, look at the different variation. That sounds really cool. Never really thought about it that way before. Awesome.
Right. And then with Alligator, now having been, close to that instrument, you can see how it has the blaster in it, so it's an active guitar. You can see how that, begets, the buffer that's on board, all the active Tiger, and Rosebud, and Wolf, and Bolt,
Yeah.
right? And so you kind of can see how Alligator, became like, yeah, a test bed for these other guitars. So it's got a block under the bridge, and that's the same thing that's under in Wolf
Mm.
as well. And so yeah, just little things like that. You can kind of see that Jerry was probably really, thinking a lot about different things, and then you see where what stays and what goes. And
Yes. I was just gonna say, like even like the Travis Beans, for instance. I mean, at the end of the day, like it's such a basic guitar, but in that particular era, 75, 76, not even just the Dead because they weren't really playing in 75, but even with JGB and the different arrangements he had with them, and then the 76, and how that sort of led to a lot of the new improvements in Tiger. I'm sorry, into Wolf that then came into Tiger. Really
right,
fascinating, and again that evolution. I mean, that we were talking about again with the custom combos and how taking the thicker neck or whatnot, or switching something around a little bit, maybe the wood style or just a different type of wood or something.
right,
And really, really fascinating and really interesting. I mean, I used to build computers. I mean, not kind of the same thing, but using different components and different things, and bringing it to something you love, especially like that. I mean, I'm not a musician by any means. I don't play anything. However, I'm a curator, and I understand, as also being a marketing person, sometimes what makes someone feel good, and people
yep,
always tell me about certain songs. I'm like, I don't know what they're doing. I have no idea, but I know how I feel right now.
right,
And that's really for me all that matters. And sometimes I don't need to know what pedal or this or that's going on, because again, my head would explode. I've got enough in here as it is. And to have other people take care of that and explain to me sometimes is just as fun, because I don't have to remember. It's like hanging out with someone else's kid. You can always give them back at the end of the day. Sort of thing. You don't have to take them home and hang out with them per se. So that's really cool. And I mean, again, hearing again the experience you had with the different the different kind of textures, we'll call it, with each guitar, some being speedy, some being heavy, thicker, whatnot. That just seems fascinating in itself. And Jerry again being able to master so many different variations over such a period of time and playing all these different ones. And obviously, most people's favorite is Tiger. And of course, I know the story. And of course, reading about your experience during the auction for Alligator, that sounded like it was truly a moment of synchronicity for you to some degree. I mean, I'm sure where you were probably, I mean, this is only a couple of years ago, and in terms of where you may have been with the foundation. I know the foundation is sort of recent, but your idea that you eventually became the librarian per se, in terms of loaning things out. Can you talk a little bit about what that experience was like with Alligator in terms of, I know the story myself, my audience may not know it. I mean, obviously the 420 is really kind of cool, and that sort of, really rings the bell in terms of synchronicity in some ways, especially if you smoke weed and know what that even means. So please, I would love to hear your thoughts on that and what that experience was like and any details, because the press release I got gave the gist, but it said there's more than this. So I'm like, what's the more? What's the more? So.
Sure. Yeah. So the Alligator was completely unexpected. I assumed it was going to go for a number that was just crazy because of Wolf, how much that had gone for. I was like, I probably missed the boat on any of these signature instruments. And so, the D28 was in the sale, and knowing the history of that instrument and the fact that he had kept it meant a lot, right? I was thinking, gosh, an acoustic that Jerry kept, because a lot of them that are out there, he gifted to people, sound engineers and different people like that. And he was so generous. And the fact that he kept it, I was like, wow, this one must really, special. So I knew I was going to go hard at that instrument. And I was kind of surprised the way they did the auction. I figured, there'd be a ton of information and it would just go crazy. They did it on a Tuesday morning in December. Was kind of felt a little random, because December's a big month and it's Tuesday morning. You know what I mean? It's not like a Saturday night like they did for Wolf or whatever it was. So maybe that was a piece of it. But anyway, I went hard at the D28 and I got it. And I thought, okay, well, I set a budget for 400K for Alligator, which is crazy. It's a guitar, it's crazy. But I was like, okay, it's worth more than that, but I want to bid on it. And so I will try to get a bid in somewhere before that number hits, so it feels like I participated.
Sure, for sure.
And right away, the bids are going in 20K increments, and I can't even say 100, whatever, it's just, they're just flying by. And I think maybe around, I feel like it might've been 360 or 380. I finally got to say at least a bid. And then, it was, I don't even know if I got to say 400. I think maybe even someone else said that number. But basically, the guy I was on the phone with, Giles, says, it's 420 to you. And, just as a deadhead and a lover of 420 my whole life, or not my whole life, my whole, Grateful Dead.
Smoking life, at least.
Right, yeah. So real quick, in the summer of 90, I spent a summer out here in San Francisco Bay Area, and we saw the 3 Cal Expo shows and the 3 Shorelines, which were all amazing. And then Jerry also played 5 Warfields and 1 at the Greek. So it was a lovely, amazing summer of Grateful Dead and Jerry Garcia band. And we had a buddy there who was a friend of my good friend from St. Lawrence, who was all into 420. I mean, majorly into 420. He would pass out 420 stickers, and no one really knew what they were about. And he would tell you all about how, that group of people from, Tam High or whatever it was, and the 420 chemicals and marijuana or whatever, all the different stuff he would say. And we would stick stickers all over the place. And anyways, his name is Johnny Ramsey, is a really nice guy who sadly has since passed. But anyway, 420 kind of had that magical thing. And once you pay attention to it, you do start to notice how many times you'd hear 420. And
sure.
So for the rest of our years in college, after that, we would do the 420 the day, and we would all, smoke out all day and have fun. And when we graduated, my roommate and I put 420 on our mortar board on our for graduation. And like when we, shook the hand of the president and then like tilted our head down, so the photographer would get the 420, which drove my dad crazy because he was like, "What the hell is 420? I want to know." And I was like, "I don't know, Dad. It's just something, So
inside joke between the guys.
Yeah, it's a joke. So anyway,
Well, there's
420.
no Google for him to Google it and figure it out.
Exactly. So yeah, I don't know. In fact, I don't know if we ever figured it out. But maybe after the documentary I'm working on and things happen, he'll put two and two together. But yeah, 420 had a special kind of place for sure, as it does for everyone probably by now. And so when Giles said, well, it's 420 to you, I was like, well, I can't say no to 420, thinking that it's going to go well beyond, right? I'm going to say 420 and it's going to go right to 440 and blah, blah. And so, he puts in the bid and then people chuckled because it was 420, and 'cause I could hear over the phone, like the room starts laughing a little bit, and then it just went dead silent, and it was so strange. And the phone people and the online people, and that was it, and he said, going once, and there it is. And, of course I got teary eyed because I couldn't believe it. And the whole thing was just so surreal. Yeah, it was amazing.
Awesome. I mean, someone asked me to ask, and they were curious. I mean, you may know, you may not know, the stickers. Do you have any idea the provenance on all the stickers, on where most of them or any of them came from, or who put them on? Was that included at all? Oh, great. Because I had a vague idea, but I mean, why not ask the person who has it and they know? So
I don't know all the details. I mean, I do know that the alligator sticker was, I think it was May or June of Europe 72 timeframe. And I was told that Sonny Hurd put that on. I don't know that for a fact, but that's what Parrish told me, so I'm taking it as fact. Cutler told me, Sam Cutler put on the Harley Davidson sticker, so he told me that. And I don't know how much you know about him, but he is still driving a Harley and stuff, so that makes total sense. The policeman's helper one is the biggest mystery, so I would love anyone out there with that one, because first of all, I've never seen a photo of Jerry playing alligator with the policeman's helper sticker on it. So I don't know when that sticker was on. I've never seen a photo from that, at least I know, is from August 1st, 73, which was the last show in New Jersey, Roosevelt Stadium. So I don't know if policeman's helper was on then. Maybe it was. It's a curious one, right? Because it's not maybe something you'd think would be on it. So I'm assuming it was a tongue-in-cheek kind of deal, but I don't know. Yeah, I really am curious to know, like, why it was put on, when it was put on. One of the questions I have too about it is how much of alligator was around in Wolf's early days, because the Grateful Dead were famous for having at least 2, if not 3, of everything as a backup. And so, and just now that I know from loaning gear and getting involved in the music side of, or the tech side of this, you always want to have a backup guitar that functions the same as the one that's the main one. So I'm so curious to know if, when Wolf was out there in the beginning, was alligator close, and maybe, maybe it was ready, and that's why they, maybe someone put that sticker on at that point, and that's what that's about. I don't know. But I would love to know, if alligator was the backup for Wolf in the beginning, or what. I know we had the Veneta Strat that followed. There was the Les Paul TV kind of yellow one that he played for a little bit in there. Maybe that was a backup. Of course, you had the Dan Erlewine Strat that has the numbers on the fretboard in that era too. There were a lot of guitars, so it's possible. Oh, also there was the Eagle, the one that was the early Irwin one that Jerry bought before Wolf was made for him. So, maybe that was it. I don't know, but I would love to know the backup status, and then also that policeman's helper, like why and who did it and when.
Yeah, for sure. That's all very fascinating, and no doubt. I mean, who knows? Maybe some random person who, when they see this video on my channel, may have a comment, and if they do, I'll follow up and let you know, and maybe we can trace that back, and who knows, and maybe we have some light on that as well.
Thank you.
Well,
Yeah, that's really so much about what we're doing, like with me, with other gearhead friends. So many great people out there working so hard on this. I think about Brad Sarno, Mike Wald. I don't know if you've heard of Waldo, but he does a lot
yes.
research and is a great source of information. But just tons of people, all the luthiers that are building these guitars. Everyone is so into it, and it's. I think it's really important that as much as we can in our generation, try to get it just exactly perfect as far as the history, because a lot of the people that were there, right, the primary sources, they're in their mid 70s and stuff, and so it'd be great to really, as much as we can, get as close to being accurate
Yeah, for
all
sure.
this stuff, because of course 50 years from now it's going to be even harder to know, and when you and I pass along the mantle to the next group to carry this thing, it'd be great to hand them, like, here's all the info we know, and
Absolutely. I mean, even when I do shows, I try to include all the recording info as much as possible. Thank a taper, because without them, we wouldn't have this, this history, this catalog, this database of our life, our love, our passions that we continue to dive into and learn and find new things all the time. With all the different shows, not just Grateful Dead, Jerry Band, the stuff he did earlier. I mean, all that stuff. And I mean, again, and that sort of leads me to the next question, which I touched on a little earlier. I mean, this is regards to the tribute guitar, which again you purchased, that was made for Jerry, which unfortunately wasn't delivered in time because it was passing in '95. Can you talk a little bit about that guitar? And I mean, I know that that was sort of I mean, when you held that, I know there was a bit of an experience there that you felt that that guitar should be played and not just collected. And I'm sort of just curious, was that sort of the birthing or the beginning? And again, we can lead this and segue this right into the Grateful Guitars Foundation, which is the reason we're here. Can you talk a little bit about that and sort of the early roads of how that sort of experience with that guitar, and obviously meeting all the different people that have been trying to beat Jerry over the years, or not try to beat Jerry, but continue the spirit of Jerry with their playing, from Jeff Matson. I know that a couple of years ago in Feb 2020, he got to play Alligator. So just a little bit about that experience as well, him playing Alligator. I know it was a big question, but again, how that kind of leads into the Grateful Guitars Foundation, because that to me is sort of the end of the spirit of the Grateful Dead again in of itself, and you continuing that flame and passing it on. So please, thank you.
Yeah, sure. So I definitely knew early on that you go to bars and you see dead bands and things, and I mean, there's no arguably harder working group than the musicians and the crew and all, they're putting on all these shows. Of course, naively, you go to shows, you think, oh, what is it, 5-6 hours or whatever, the show or whatever. You don't appreciate all the work that goes in all the time leading up to the show, whether for the player it's practicing and all that, but also the guitars need to be set up, the rigs need to be set up, the wiring, just so much work, all the heavy lifting going in. The show itself is kind of the easy part in some ways.
Yeah.
And then loadout, which is several hours after that. So you're getting home at 4 a.m. and usually only getting paid for the 3-hour gig, and not very much, sadly. So anyway, yeah, I noticed that, you'd see really, really great guitarists playing guitars that were not the best guitars, right? They were not world-class instruments. And even if they were Strats and stuff, a lot of times, like, they were not the higher end Strats or Gibsons and things. So I knew that was a thing that needed help, and when I got the Wolf guitar from Matt, I knew, I, like some guys, and I'm like, hey, if you ever want to borrow it or whatever, totally can. I was not going to buy the Saturn without letting the person I was buying it from know, like, hey, it's going to get played, and there's just no way I could own that and not have it out there enjoyed by the whole community. It would literally, it would crush me. You know what I mean? Like, it's just not right. It needs to be out there for the fans to see, but also, for Jerry and for Stephen Kripe, it just felt like that's what they would have wanted, and that was the mission of the guitar. It was built to be at Shoreline or whatever, on stage at the Warfield and all these places. And so And I was very aware that they had passed, and unfortunately, I've lost a fair amount of people who are younger or whatever. So, you know, they're always with me. You know what I mean? And you think about those people you've lost, and you want to do them a solid. And it kind of also strikes me that like the whole Grateful Dead, the meaning of Grateful Dead is doing a solid for people who have passed on. And so, yeah, it was like my mission to get the Cripe guitar to as many of the big stages that it should have been, quote unquote, had Jerry lived and had Cripe, you know, not passed a year later. And I'm proud to say, yeah, it's been at the Warfield, it's been at the Fillmore, you know, it's been at some of these bigger places, at Jerry Garcia's amphitheater and things. And so, yeah, it certainly is a little different from other collectors. I've learned, you know, that other collectors, you know, would want to just have it on the wall or have it be exactly the way I got it, you know, from Cripe.
Museum piece, right? Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Right. And Adam Palo was the person who sold it to me, and he was Cripe's apprentice, and he totally agreed that it should be played. And Steve Armato, who runs the Cripe Guitars website, totally agreed. And both of them have been super supportive. I send them clips of it when it's on stage and things like that.
Awesome.
And I've worked much closer with Steve lately on the Cripe Guitars website. And Cripe is such an amazing story about the Grateful Dead and Jerry. You know, here's a guy who was a boat builder, you know, who was a fan, kind of like you and I were talking about before, like, you know, you love something and then you start, you know, engaging in it, pouring your heart into it. And he decided he wanted to build, you know, Jerry guitar. And he, you know, apparently had the Dead Ahead video and wore out the VHS tape. Only from that, basically building a guitar that ended up being Lightning Bolt. I mean, several iterations, but eventually it was Lightning Bolt. And of course, we know the story. You know, Jerry said this was the guitar he'd always been looking for, and ended up playing it. But to think about, you know, especially now that I've worked with a lot of different bands and loaned them gear and things, every player is different, and every player, you know, their hands are different, everything the action height they want, you know, all kinds of string gauge, all these differences that they have, the feel has to be right. And, you know, it's their business. So I totally get it. And I would never be, you know, hurt if they didn't want to play something or whatever. But it just amazes me when I think back on now knowing this, how Jerry, you know, took a fan's instrument, right? And he had, you know, been with Doug Irwin all these years, who was an incredible talented luthier. And the fact that he even like picked it up and tried it, to me, is astounding, right?
Yeah.
But it shows how, you know, how he was. I mean, you know, you have to be a big-hearted, open person to even do it, right? I could see some other like prima donna type star being like, get that out of here, I don't want to see some fans build.
Yeah.
Right? But he gave it a chance, and he ended up loving it. And it's just such a cool story. And you know, I just wish Steve Cripe had lived, you know, to keep building and to see all these bands out there playing, you know, his guitars. But yeah, just to me, the story of that, and how like Jerry being like an equal opportunity player, I guess, you know, to pick that up and to play it. And so, yeah, the thing that I've learned, like I got, I wanted to get a Strat that was sort of like the Vanita Strat, you know, because I'm going through like trying to find pieces of gear for all these shows. And the Vanita Strat, not surprisingly for, you know, Jerry, it's gonna be a very nice guitar, is a 57 Strat, which are very expensive. And so I got one, you know, it's not like the highest end, but a really solid one. And the downside is the frets were, you know, almost fretless, right? They were so worn down. And talking to Alex Jordan, who's a good buddy of mine, and he works at Griffin Strings here in Palo Alto. And, you know, we were like, you know, this thing is, the tone's amazing, but man, these frets. And it was sort of like, what do you want to do? And all the collectors, you know, like the place I bought it from in New York, they were like, you're going to lose $5,000 the second you know, swap out the frets. Yeah. But, you know, and thinking about it and thinking about what I'd done with the Cripe, and just, you know, these are meant to be played. That's the ethos I have about it. And I think, you know, one of the things that fed that was I was at a string quartet, and there was a Stradivarius there. And, you know, I mean, that's really old, and it's worth like $1 million. And I was like, man, if a Stradivarius is getting played, you know, everything should be getting played, right? And I've since learned from Rick Turner that Stradivariuses all have had major work done, like, you know, headstocks have been changed. I think maybe in the length of the necks, and all kinds of stuff has happened to them. And they're still Stradivariuses, and they're still special and worth a lot of money. And so the analogy I use with the frets is it's like buying, you know, a 50s Ferrari or 60s, you know,
Yeah.
Ferrari, Porsche, and you have this beautiful thing, and the person says, "Hey, man, don't change those tires, you know, because those are really old and they're special or whatever." And it's like you're gonna crash. I mean, it's
Yeah.
not
I want to live.
great,
I'll take them off and put them over there, maybe not drive them, and they put them back on if I ever sell it. But yeah, no.
right,
So,
right, exactly, yeah. And you can't even really drive and enjoy the driving part, right? If you're gonna fly off the road. So, yeah. So I refretted that, and since the alligator, I got a 55 strat because I wanted to have another 55, because we learned that alligator is a 55 strat. It's not, a lot of people thought it was a
57.
mixture of 57 and a 63, but it's actually 55 through and through. And so, you know, if there was some issue where you needed a part, I wanted to be like able to take it off a 55 strat. And again, I got a low end as far as expensive one, you know, didn't care that it was kind of beat up, but as long as it had the parts,
Yeah, for the
I
parts,
could
for
use
sure.
it. And again, the frets were gone, but I put new frets on it, and they just sound so alive and well. And you know, I don't want to scare anyone out there. You know, I'm not going to put new frets on alligator right away, but someday when it needs them, yeah, I'm going to be a proponent of doing that.
Great. I don't. I personally don't have a problem with it. I think that an instrument or something like that, in order for longevity, you sometimes need to maintain it and upkeep it, or in essence, you could ruin it more in some cases. So, I
Right.
mean, yeah, I mean, legacy is all, I think, all about that. I mean, we put new roofs on our homes. We do different things all the time for ourselves. Some people, do plastic surgery. I don't do that, but some people, everyone has their own thing that they do with that's for them that prolongs whatever it is for them. And that's wonderful. And again, that's a perfect segue again. I mean, back into fine learning about the Grateful Guitars Foundation, and preserving, again, keeping your spirit and your legacy for that higher quality instrument, being the right hand with the right musician, and that person who can't necessarily in that moment or in time afford it, and basically loaning them out. So can you talk a little about? I mean, I know basically in at least the release I got, it's a more recent beginning, or at least launch of it. Can
Yep.
you speak a little bit more about what's the process like? How does someone become part of it? Or it just more like luck of the draw? Maybe you saw a video on YouTube of a band playing and you liked the band, but you thought they could be better, and you reached out. What's sort of the process, and how does one sign up, or how does one get recognized or become a part of the Grateful Guitar Foundation that you started so wonderfully?
Thank you. Yeah. So it officially launches in about 10 days on May 25th. And we'll have a website up, and it will go into some of those details. So far, all the guitars I've personally gifted to players, which I've done on my own, was exactly like you're saying, the kind of luck of the draw. You know, people I'd see, people I'd meet. Obviously, being in the Bay Area, bands that come through here, and a player, and oh wow, start talking to them about something. Maybe loan them, a Leo Elliott, Scarlet Fire guitars, Tiger, or the Moriarty Wolf, or what have you, or the, Kevin Burkett with Travis Bean Designs, a guitar like that, or Rich Hogue with his Black Knife. And then you get right away the feeling, right? Some people are
Yeah.
like, that was great for the show. We nailed 1986. Thank you so much. But I really like my whatever. I'm gonna go back to that. Or someone else like, oh my God, that opened up so many doors for me. I found a whole new level of my playing. Where can I get one? Kind of deal.
Yeah.
So
Is there a
so yeah,
layaway plan? Can I pay and install it? Whatever.
exactly. Yeah. So I was like, okay,
I want it. I gotta have it. Yeah.
making mental notes, and I did order some like behind their back in a way, or whatever, then surprised them and gifted them, with guitars. So all kind of the early partner players, it was kind of random and luck of the draw, so to speak. But now that we have an official organization, that essentially, how it's going to work is people will apply on the website, and yeah, sharing videos, their backstory, how long they've been playing. Of course, our goal is to get every player an instrument, right? That's our
Yeah.
hope. We need to, of course, grow the foundation and all that. But I think yeah, I think we'll be able to do it. You know, a lot of people are excited about it. A lot of the fans I've seen over the years are really into the gear, and they're kind of like me in the same way. I used to go to dead shows and wish that Jerry would pull out like a Travis Bean, you know,
Yeah.
because I just, you know, I'd listen to the bootlegs and hear that, you know, the growling sounds, you know, Spring 77 or whatever, and be like, oh man, wouldn't it be sick if he came out on that old Travis Bean and, you know, threw down. And so I was so stoked in '89 when Wolf, you know, came out, because it was that exact dream. But yeah, so I'm trying where I just was on that. Sorry, I lost my train of thought. But anyway, so you know, the collection is connected in the sense that it is a guitar library, as Dennis describes it. If any band comes to the Bay Area and says we're doing, you know, the Milkweg show from '81, you know, I have a Yamaha SC1000 for them that they can play that looks just exactly like the one Jerry played those couple of gigs. And so that's the fun kind of part of it, is getting those tones. Oh, I know, that's where I'm going, the fans. So like Stu Allen played a Berkeley show that had a Les Paul Deluxe, 82471, I think is the date, and played it at Ashkenaz in Berkeley. And I had the Les Paul Deluxe, which are not highly collectible. They're getting more so now, but in the beginning they were actually rerouted and turned into kind of standard Les Pauls. But anyway, so Stu plays this show. This woman comes up to me and she says, I was at the original show and I never thought I'd hear those tones again. And I just want to thank you, you know, for bringing that guitar and me hearing these tones. And, you know, that just made my whole year, you know. And for me, you know, I was 1 year old in '71. So, you know, selfishly, that's a part of it, is I get to hear tones and things like Alligator or Europe 72 vibes that of course I only knew on, you know, bootlegs or albums, you know. So it is really fun to in a way, experience some of these tones that you never got to see because you were late to the party or whatever.
Yeah.
Or just curious. And so that's been really fun. And I've definitely noticed when the players, you know, bust these out, that you kind of hear a little chatter. You know, maybe some people are spinning and they don't care, but there's definitely a group of people that, yeah, just sort of chattering like, what's going on? Yeah. And it kind of, you know, it definitely lifts the player up because they feel inspired, you know, they're excited. Even if it's a replica, you know, it looks like Wolf or it looks like Tiger, and I'm excited, and it makes it a special show of all the shows they're doing in a given week. And then the audience lifts up. And one of the greatest things about our tribe is that feedback loop between the band and the audience, right? And so it just lifts the whole thing, and it's just, yeah, it's amazing, and it's so exciting to be a part of it. And the foundation, you know, what is so exciting about it, I've had the idea for a long time, it's just taken a while to get the 501c3, and then COVID.
Yes.
and,
So
and then
that's
I
kind of affected. So yeah.
right, I was
Right.
hoping to launch it last month, but I broke my leg, and
That's
so
kind of why I mentioned that, but I was like, oh, maybe. Yeah. Okay. Good.
right, so yeah, so it's been a long time coming, but basically, yeah, I mean, our goal is to keep this scene that we love thriving, and not just Grateful Dead, but the whole jam band scene. And so we want to identify players who thrive playing live music, you know, not sort of the pop music of today where you don't even know if there's a band, but
That's
yeah,
true.
people who are really playing, you know, and jamming, and helping them get the gear that they want. And I mean, selfishly, it's my dream to have a Wolf, you know, in every bar, coast to coast, and even internationally. You know, I want to walk into a bar, I want to hear a Tennessee Jet and poke my head in and see someone on a Wolf or an Alligator clone or whatever it is. And this foundation, you know, because of the connections I've made with the luthiers and building the gear that I have, they're all there ready, you know, for whatever somebody wants, including a full custom. It doesn't have to be a Jerry style. It can be, you know, something that is, you know, has a little nod to that or whatever. But yeah, whatever the players are looking for, I want to help. And it also could be, you know, some blues shredder from Chicago who needs a better, you know, SG, or wants a Strat or whatever it is.
So
You know,
cool.
we want to help all people. And yeah, I mean, it's not like, you know, it's not as maybe important as feeding the homeless, or I work on another nonprofit that brings sports to underserved youths. Those are really, really important things. And this is important, but it's not as important as those, but it's still important.
Absolutely. I mean, well, yes, for sure. And I appreciate that last part. I mean, again, everyone's has their own perspective and their own lens for what's important to them. And, but music, again, music in so many ways brings people a different pleasure than, people can ever experience. And when there's that connection, especially to a band like the Grateful Dead or Jerry or, even jam bands in general, I mean, it's its own community. I mean, speaking to your point, I mean, I wasn't able in my, youth between 90 and 95 to really go on the road and see, let's say, Fish. I mean, I saw a bunch of Dead shows when they came to Buffalo. I'm from Canada. I can't go anywhere. I'm not allowed anywhere. Even now, more so with COVID, I can't go anywhere. That's
Right.
nor here nor there. And so when the opportunity came, eventually, I eventually ventured out to bars, and there were tribute bands playing in Toronto, and I walked up to them and said, "Hey, you're only doing this once a month. How can we make you do this every week? How can we make you go on the road?" And they thought I was crazy and didn't know. And then next thing you know, I'm in the back of the car. I'm in the car with my gear, going to shows on the road with bands, webcasting them, not asking for money because I'm trying to be the forest for their trees, because they don't know, they can't play the computer while they play their instrument. They can't do the social media while they play their instrument. I mean, they could, it would just, and so I try to come in and bridge that gap. And that's sort of like why, the Grateful Guitarist Foundation, which, going forward, I support 100%. And I'm hoping there's opportunities for me in some other way, whether it be with my, my Google Smarts, my YouTube Smarts, whatever, that I can help you guys in, in a very much philanthropic way to give back and contribute so that you can keep your mission and continue that of getting, more of the instruments into the people's hands. Because again, yeah, it's something that means a lot to me again. And like we talked about earlier at the beginning about, I'm not rich, but I've set up my life. I'm comfortable that I can do these other things and I can have my passions. And I've actually seen my life grow in other ways because of layering that in and giving back and being quote unquote grateful per se. So it's something I completely support, and it's something that's amazing. And on top of that, I also read as well that you're also a producer of a not-for-profit documentary that's called "The Music Plays the Band." I know it's recently, has that been released yet? I know it was supposed to come out sometime in 2020, and I couldn't find it. I'm a Google guy, and I can't find it, then it's not there.
No,
so
not yet.
yeah, I was just gonna say. So when do we have a time frame on that, a date? Because I'm sure people would love to see that and a little bit more about that. If you could just tell a little bit about the document and when it might be available and how people eventually can find the Grateful Guitars organization. And I've got my little follow-up kind of fun questions that we should be out of here in about 5 minutes.
Sweet. Yeah. So The Music Plays the Band came out of the summer of 2018. Zach Nugent was doing a show at Garcia's at the Cap, and I was super stoked. Having being from back east, and I'd missed some reunions and things. I was like, oh, I'll go back. I'll help put on the show with Zach here at Garcia's, and I'll invite a bunch of friends from Westminster and St. Lawrence, and we'll have a great time. And we did the June '77 Winterland show, and Zach is a total gamer, and had the Travis Keen that I helped him get, and other gear and stuff on stage, and it was just super incredible fun. And I said, well, it would be great if we could film it too, just have it for posterity or whatever. And so he connected me with Mountain Mansfield Media, a company in the Burlington area, and they came down and they shot it and did some interviews out front with some people and friends and all that. And then so I've got like individual songs from that gig that they were going to work on, and I would put them on social media or whatever it was. But then it was sort of like, hey, maybe we should do some more interviews. This is kind of cool. And then all behind the scenes, I'd also had an idea of doing a documentary on this amazing scene, like you were talking about, how their bands are everywhere, And I would notice reading Rolling Stone, you never heard about Further, even though they were selling out everywhere they went, or Dead & Co, whatever it is. It just sort of was this like thing that was off to the side. I don't know what they thought of it. It just never really got any notoriety. And it's crazy because there's such a huge cottage industry doing this music. And so I thought it would be really cool to do a documentary on all these bands. I mean, I hate to use the word tribute bands, but that's the only word that kind of exists, right now. But I try to say Grateful Dead style bands or Grateful Dead bands. and Jerry style music instead of like fake Jerry or any of that kind of stuff. Because really, the band that we all love, it did create a new genre. It's created a community. It's created a genre of music. And as many people said in the documentary, like no one says, "Oh, is that a fake, fake Beethoven or whatever?" You know what I mean? Like you go see the symphony and then you hear Beethoven, and wouldn't have been a shame if after these people passed, it was like, "Oh, that's not cool. You can't play that," or whatever. So yeah, I thought it would be really neat to do a documentary that just highlighted all these bands all around the country at a minimum. And so that concert sort of movie idea became that. It was like, let's just do it. Let's just do the thing we were talking about doing. And so we've interviewed hundreds of people, bands all over the country, insiders, all kinds of people, and it's just really, really been amazing. Super interesting, as far as like a deadhead hearing the inside story of all these people and all the different interviews. And as I'm sure you found, people say, "Oh, I only got 10 minutes," and then 45 minutes later, you're still talking to them. Anyway, so it's been wonderful. The hardest part is editing it, just getting it into the right form. I really want to make sure it's not too long. I love The Long Strange Trip, but it was a little long. I want this to be under, no longer than 2, maybe even an hour and a half.
Yeah.
Just try to keep it as tight as possible. And so that's where we are right now is editing. We're also doing some final shooting here and there. This past weekend, and I was at the great Dark Star Orchestra in Felton, and Betty Cantor Jackson was there recording, so we filmed her recording, and we also did an interview with her. So we're going to sprinkle in some of the insiders here and there, but basically it is it's pretty much 95% there. We might just have to sprinkle a little bit in here and there, and then do a little more editing. And so the hope is that by the fall it'll be out. That's the hope. So cool. I know that distribution and there's some other pieces of that have to happen. But it's such a unique audience, right? This isn't like any other movie audience, where you put it right on Netflix or whatever it is. This is more, people want to see it. They're trying to figure out how can they see it. And my personal dream would be to have it also go with music, right? So you watch the movie, and then the curtain would come up, and then we get to all dance together and do the real thing.
Yeah, for sure.
And so that might happen. I don't know yet if we can pull that off, but it's it's been a super fun project. And also just watching like the filmmakers who are not deadheads, guess what happened to them, right? Now they are loving the Grateful Dead, and I'm getting YouTube clips from the director like, "Hey, did you see this dude?" Like, yes.
Well, actually, I kind of when I actually broke Dennis's interview into 2 components because it was over an hour and a half, and I just didn't know who had the attention span for that, right? I mean, obviously he told some great stories and he did all the talking because no one wants to hear me talk. But what I did for the second segment is I did my Jerry Church, and then I had it tied in with that. So when Jerry Church was over, we ran to part 2 of the interview, and then to that point I put set 2 of Dennis's first show. So it was like a 5-hour Sunday. But Deadheads, 5 hours. That's a good year. That's a good show. That's one of the best that you can get. So I tried to drag it out more, and that's the commitment I've made now. Is I'm going to put all these interviews, obviously, after or during Jerry Church at the end of it. So obviously the largest possible audience is available to hear it. And back to the spirit of that, when this documentary is available, I'd love maybe to try and see if we can get up to Canada and maybe do like a night at the movies in Toronto at our average documentary theater, get all the heads together, and maybe I can even get a local cover band, tribute band to come out and play acoustics and bluegrass before or after, and kind of make an evening out of it when everything finally opens back up here. So that sounds like a fun opportunity as well.
So I didn't get to ask you, did you go to all the Canada shows back in the day?
It's been, for the most part, yeah. I mean, we only had so many. I mean, I only started in 89 was my first show, July 4th, 89. So that was my first. I obviously did all the Hamilton shows, so I wasn't available to go to Toronto 87 up at Kingswood, which would have been amazing. That was just a small venue. And then obviously the Dead was scheduled to play here Yom Kippur weekend in 95. We obviously know what happened. And I remember the chatter in the city was like, everyone, all the friends, how are we gonna get a dinner? How are we gonna tell our parents? Like, this is Jewish, like the holiest night of the year, but the Dead's coming to town. Who cares, And obviously it didn't get that far, but It was just one of those kind of experiences. We were just excited because I think it was after the '87 show. There were so many deadheads were found all over the place that they were essentially banned from Toronto again, and that's why Cops Coliseum in Hamilton became the venue, and that was obviously great. I mean,
oh my God, those shows were so good. We went, a bunch of us went up from St. Lawrence for those, and I mean, I am so glad that I made the trek for those 2 nights, because I mean, there was a lot of great music, but the Scarlet Fire,
oh yeah,
you know, I mean, gosh, and the Hey Jude, I mean, it was really special.
yeah, no doubt. I mean, again, for us to see it locally, I mean, again, like you said about the age group, and again, that's sometimes what I'm doing now with bring back in, and back to your point about, you know, when you see someone play that guitar, or someone in the chat or in the audience about how happy it makes you. When I'm in my chat, and I'm giving a little secret to everyone in here, when I see someone say they haven't heard this version because I've dug deep into the vault and I pulled up this recording and I found this, you know, very rare version of Jerry doing What's Going On for 27 minutes from '73 with Merle, and no one's ever heard it, and it makes me happy. It gives all the value to what I do. And you know, I mean, I don't do this for money. I mean, great if someone buys tips. I do have merch, yeah, because people want to associate themselves, and it makes me happy and proud to do that, and to, you know, maybe be at a show one day and see people walking around with the GNU church wear or whatever. And, you know, it makes my heart, you know, feel great that I can contribute and give that back that way. Again, in the spirit of this. And so I completely understand the mission, and that's why, you know, for me, it rang to me when Dennis first gave me the story. I really understood what your purpose was in that regard, and where that love came from. Without even knowing the whole story, I could kind of feel it, and it made sense to me. And again, sort of to my journey as well in that way. So I'll keep you for a few more minutes. I've done this wonderful thing. My co-producer, who's my wife, she's now my co-producer, because she is, and she's the best, and she helps do me all the research and helps give me the initial planning, because she's a movie freak. In the style of her favorite interviewer in the Bay, James Lipton, who did the Inside the Actor Studio. Dennis loved this segment, so I decided to carry it on. So we're going to do a little bit of quick little, about 8 to 10 questions, get you out in a couple of minutes, but let's ready to get fire up. Are you ready? We're going to go.
Yes, I'm ready.
What is your favorite word?
Oh my God. Awesome.
What is your least favorite word?
Homework.
Okay. What turns you on creatively, spiritually, or emotionally?
I mean, it has to be the Grateful Dead. I mean, I can't think of a better answer to that.
What turns you off?
Selfishness, greed.
Dennis said Trump. So.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah. I don't want to offend, but yeah. Yeah.
What is your favorite curse word?
The F word.
F word. He's being polite by not saying it. Dennis was like, motherfucker.
Yes, I say fuck a lot.
Great. What sound or noise do you love?
I mean, the wah wah. I mean, that's the first time I could do even just a couple of notes of shakedown through a jerry rig, you know, with the help of all those people I mentioned before, and the Are You Kind Forum, and Dozen, Chris Sandell, all these great guys. It's heaven, right? And if you come visit me, I will put that in your hands, and you'll be able to do it too. And it's just so cool when you get that womp womp sound.
That's
you just
cool. You can thank Dozen. You can thank Dozen. We use his chart when doing shows to always verify which guitar. We try to go to Dozen as much as possible. When I pick pictures for the shows, that's my thing. And I'm like, oh, I saw it on Dozen. It must be right. Or I try to get as close as possible. So that's
he's
awesome.
Amazing. Chris is a great guy. And super helpful with the weird side of the coin, you know, because that's a whole nother piece of it. All the weird gear and all the weird, you know, amps and pieces and guitars. And he's always the first person I go to.
That's awesome. All right. What sound or noise do you hate or not like?
Silence, I'd say.
I'm a mindfulness person, so that's funny to me.
Yeah, I mean, I sleep with white noise, and I'm a surfer. I love the sound of the ocean, but dead silence freaks me out.
I hear you. No, I hear, and I guess I'm mindfulness, and I completely hear you with that. It resonates a lot. What profession other than your own would you like to attempt?
Gosh, that's a really good question. I mean, I don't want to be a lawyer, but I kind of wish I was one, because I really don't like being clueless and having to rely on lawyers. And, you know, when it comes to politics and all the things, like I wish I knew more about the law and all that stuff, you know. So
Very cool.
I'd like a law degree, but I don't want to practice it.
Interesting. My childhood dream was to be a lawyer. Look at that.
Wow.
Well, it hasn't happened yet, but you never know. You just never know what's on the horizon.
I've heard there's a connection between lawyers and psychotherapists, which does make sense when the way it was described to me is because psychotherapists, and you'll appreciate this from mindfulness work, you know, you think a lot about your thinking and the words you choose to use. So if you say, you know, I hate this or whatever, you try to reframe it like, okay, I dislike when there's not enough mayo, or I don't know, whatever it is, you know. Like,
that's why it wasn't about what noise you hate. I changed it around. I'm like, I don't like, no, I'm crossing that out in the future. I don't want to use hate. I just don't, we ain't got no time for that. So
right, exactly.
And 2 more to go. What profession would you not like to do?
Yeah, anything. I mean, I did the corporate world. I would say anything that found me, you know, 12 hours a day under fluorescent lights.
Yeah, agency ag world. I know that world very well, all too well. Well, yours a little different, but I know mine. All right, and our final one. If heaven exists, what would you like to have? What would you like to hear God say to you when you arrive at the pearly gates?
Let's take that ride one more time. You know, I'm hoping for the sort of other plane, keeping going with, you know, the people that have passed, and go get to hang with them, and I don't know, yeah, go have fun somewhere else and do fun things on another plane or planet or whatever, or iteration of this plan. I don't know what it is, but I'm that's what I'd like to do.
That's awesome. Dennis is. I love Dennis. He goes, "Where's my laminate?" That's supposed to go backstage. I love it. Well,
He's got to that.
And so again, from your own ears, where can the audience find Grateful Guitar Organization Foundation? Sorry, will that be the website.org? Will there also be Facebook, Twitter, you know, pages, all that kind of stuff?
Yeah. So for sure, we're gonna have gratefulguitars.org, and we have that already. Bob Minkin's actually helping me set that website up right now, and so that will go live on the 25th. And I will also endeavor to have a Facebook page and a Twitter page and an Instagram page for it too.
Awesome.
But yeah, I love what Dennis shared, that you could maybe help with this stuff, because he's not a marketing person in the social media tech world.
Happy to chat. Happy to help.
Yeah, so I would definitely love to talk to you more about that kind of stuff, because we definitely could use help in that way. And I know it's such an important thing, especially for the younger audience. I do have my 20-year-old son, and I have about to be 17 as well, and they both are very helpful, looking at my posts and being like, you know, remove those periods, you know, or whatever.
A few more emojis.
Right, exactly. They're super helpful, but yeah, we really do need someone who's dedicated, both meanings of that word.
Yeah, for sure.
To help.
Pun intended.
Right, yeah, to help with us on that front, so that people can find us, and it's really easy to donate. The good news is, I wanted to say too, I forgot to say this. So the music plays the band. It's not for profit. All the profits for the movie will be split between the Grateful Dead's Rex Foundation, because I figured, you know, they deserve that. And then also Grateful Guitars. So if it does really well, that'll be a nice, good, you know, nest egg or what have you, to help us really kick this thing off strongly and start getting gear right into people's hands. I did plan, like I said, it's been in the works for a while, so I ordered some guitars ahead of time. And so when this launches, you're going to see a video also of at least 2 guys getting guitars that are in the Jerry Bobby vein.
Wow.
And because custom guitars can take 1 to 3 years to be ready. I didn't want to launch and then be like 3 years later, you know, see your first thing. Yeah, I wanted to have some things in the pipeline, so that right away people could get excited and see, you know, when they support us, you know, it's real, and they get to see it happening.
Very cool. Very cool. I love it all. I'm on board. I support it all. And I thank you very much for your time today. And I look forward to connecting again in the future and in any kind of your endeavors, and hopefully one day to come out and meet you and everyone else, the foundation and whatnot. And like I said, love to be a part and contribute any way that I can. And again, I thank you for your time, Andy. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, David. And I will be in touch right away about the marketing stuff. And also, yeah, let's talk about the movie and what we can do, and maybe like your idea of doing a Canadian tour. I love that. That's awesome.
Yeah, absolutely. I've got Canadian Jerry to come along too.
Sweet. And I